Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. And a special programme, not just celebrating winter, but the whole of the gardening year. But for the moment, it's Christmas time, so let's enjoy it. Coming up on today's programme, Nick is a great Dickster, and the gardens are designed to show that a conifer is not just for Christmas.
This topiary, these hedges, the conifers strewn through the garden actually are absolutely fundamental to the structure.
Our main infrastructure, other than the buildings and the brick walls, relies on yew hedging.
Now, it wouldn't be Christmas without a good period drama, and Adderley tells the historical tale of one of our most rebellious British gardeners, Ellen Wilmot.
Rumour had it that she carried a loaded revolver and a knuckle duster in her handbag.
Rachel teams up with the gardener and florist Arthur Parkinson to deck the halls in their own unique way.
We're going to do a tablescape.
Yes.
Which is like one of those hot words, isn't it, at the moment?
And I'll be preparing my dahlias to store them over winter so they will be in good condition to plant out next spring. What I'm starting to do is to sort out the plants we've got here, both in the cold frames and in this area, which we call the standing out bay. But the truth is, it's a collection of plants, by and large, that we don't quite know what to do with. I need to get on and plant those out so I can make space to store and protect winter plants. Now, earlier this year, Joe went up to Cumbria to visit a garden with bold designs on winter.
Situated on a Cumbrian hillside lies Kate Coulson's garden. Standing proud even in the coldest season, with its impressive structural planting, classic box borders and some quirky artistry. I'm here to meet the designer who has spent over 2 decades perfecting this inspirational space to make it her own. Well, Kate, for a late winter's day, I mean, this is absolutely gorgeous, isn't it? You only started gardening around 20 years ago, is that right?
Yes, when we came here. I had no experience of it before, but the house came with a garden and I had to start learning about it, but I didn't know what I was doing at first. I realised looking back that I'd always been someone who liked to make things, use my hands, and I liked to be doing something. And gardening just suddenly gave me a sort of outlet where I was very busy doing, but also designing and creating. So to me, that's an absolutely fantastic combination. So after I'd been gardening here for about 7 or 8 years, I felt there was more I could learn. So I went to the English Gardening School and did plants and plantsmanship, which was fantastic. And I could suddenly see what was available and what my options were and how I could use the plants through the seasons. For winter, we rely completely on structure because there's a lot of hedging and topiary, but I don't plant for winter colour. It's just the forms in the garden, which I think animate the space.
Yeah.
They look rather good.
You have to be very, very strict, you know, with this planting regime.
Yes.
Mildly, I mean, don't take this the wrong way, mildly obsessive, perhaps?
Yes, I am obsessive. I have a notebook by my bed and a pencil, and I will wake in the night and with new ideas and draw things and things I want to change. It never stops.
And do you have anyone to bounce ideas off?
Yes, I have 2 fantastic gardeners who work together and they will tell me what's realistic or not. That's the most salutary thing.
So do you come out with your notebook in the morning and they're like, oh no, she's coming out with the notebook again. You guys had another, she had another dream.
Yeah.
Now, one of the first things you notice is the way Kate's used topiary in the garden, and it sits just perfectly, especially on the front lawn here, which would otherwise be an expanse of grass. It breaks it up beautifully. But she's used yew, like this one, and I don't know, they're like perfume bottles, huge perfume bottles, nice evergreen structure, but also some deciduous shapes too, in the form of this Crataegus prunifolia. And Kate has actually strung these lower branches down with a technique to sort of lower the base and get these lovely clip shapes, and there's a uniformity throughout. And I think having some deciduous plants mixed in with the evergreen keeps it nice and light as well. Is it all evergreen, it might feel a little bit heavy and a little bit dark, and then you get the seasonal interest of the flowers and the fabulous autumn colour too. And then at the base, we've got this pedestal of Hebe topiaria. And this is a pretty bog standard shrub. Kate has layered it down and then just clipped it into shape, and that works beautifully there. But I love the way that Kate has dealt with the sense of scale in this garden. It's a big garden, and you have to have big pieces like this to break it up and sort of anchor the garden into the landscape. And I think she's been incredibly bold, incredibly confident, but it works just perfectly. I'm so lucky. This is a beautiful light today, I have to say. What a day to visit this garden. This is the Parterre garden, and as you can see, it's cut out of a huge slope of a hillside, basically. But the terracing is a wonderful solution. It makes it practical and accessible. But at the same time, from here, it layers the planting up. At this time of year, it's the light that is really special. The way it plays on the topiary at the back. So we've got the onion-shaped box clipped all the way through. And at the back, a perfectly clipped yew hedge, that strong horizontal line. And what that's saying is, this is the garden, and that's the wilderness beyond. One of the details I love on this top border is the way Kate has trained this rose over this structure, and it's so simple here, but it adds plenty of height and volume to this border, even in the winter. This is an old rose, Ispahan, a single plant that she's just trained up crisscrossed across each other. You could use a shrub rose or maybe a climbing rose, anything vigorous enough that's not going to get too big. But I think it looks brilliant. It's sort of plant ornamentation that fits in with all the topia and all the structure of this garden beautifully. It looks great. Even in winter, this lime walk looks absolutely stunning. We've got the mottled trunk, which just ties in beautifully with the tones and the colour of the stonework behind me. But then these red buds that are waiting to burst open. So even in their skeletal form, they're adding so much to this garden. And they lead you up and then through into the kitchen garden. Now, this in the summer is packed full of edibles and a riot of colour as well, with plenty of dahlias. But at this time of year, it's just pared back to a few simple elements, but they're all working beautifully together. So we've got this incredibly formal layout with the box hedging, with the signature sort of onions clipped into each corner here. And behind me, we've got that wonderful greenhouse painted blue with some orange clivias in it too. And they sort of mimic the colour of the pyrocanthus, which are trained against the wall horizontally. They're great in spring when they flower. Bees absolutely love it. And now it's covered in berries and the birds will go for that too. And of course, it's evergreen, will grow in sun or shade. But look at these. I mean, I've never seen kale grown like this before. I'm going to call it topiarized kale. Purple kale, just sort of standing to attention. And you know that they have been measured out with military precision. And they add a lovely, quirky touch to this part of the garden.
The thing that really caught my eye was the deciduous topiary, the hawthorns clipped. I've got a few here, and it's something that I want to do more of, because topiary doesn't have to be evergreen to be part of the mix. Talking about mix, I've got cuttings that are ready to go out, seedlings that aren't ready to go out, seedlings that should have gone out, other plants that they've sat here for a year or two and we still haven't planted them. Well, now is the time to make decisions. So either plant them, give it away, or put it on the compost heap, and at least then it's going back into the garden and feeding the plants that you do want. For example, I've got some clematis here that I can plant out. I didn't plant them out in the summer because it was so dry, and clematis just hates dry. But there's no reason why these can't be planted, so I need to do it. And this tray here of the rocket is going up to the top greenhouse, and we'll be harvesting these in a few weeks' time and go on harvesting them through till spring, when we can replace them with the next flush. Now, we went to visit Stephanie Hafty in her garden near Lampeter in Wales, and she gives us a masterclass on how to grow a wide range of vegetables through all the winter months.
I really, really love growing plants. I love growing things that you can eat. It's constantly stimulating and different and exciting. I started to grow as much food as I could when my children were very young and we were absolutely broke. So it was a way of providing more food for a growing family. My goal was to grow food all year round so that there was always something that we could pick from the garden. When I moved here 18 months ago, this area where I'm sitting now, the back garden, was grass. So there was no vegetable garden, and I've made every single bed here. I'm pretty much growing everything that you possibly could in a garden on a Welsh hillside, and a few things that you possibly shouldn't be able to grow as well. I like to really fill the garden with abundance. I want to have things cropping right the way through the year, from January to December. It's like every week there's something new that you can eat and savour. It's a constant source of joy. I like to have good value for money, so it's important for me not only to grow a beautiful, abundant garden, but also that it is affordable and that it is grown as healthily but as cheaply as possible. I try to use every single bit of the plant that I possibly can. Here I've got some Florence fennel growing, and this is a bulbing vegetable, so normally I would be growing it for the bulb. However, we've had some hot, dry weather and some of it has bolted, which is absolutely fine because the flowers of the fennel are used by the wild things. They're really good forage for insects, and the seeds that it will produce are delicious to eat. I can use them in cooking, and you can use the fronds as a herb in cooking, and the stems can be chopped up and used when I'm making soups and things. So there's many, many different uses. And the really exciting thing about fennel is for the bulb, when you harvest it and cut it off at ground level, unless it's killed by very, very cold weather, it will regrow. This is a white sprouting broccoli, and I planted this here in the garden last summer, and really it should have been harvested in May. I should have cleared it, but instead I decided to perennialise it, and this means that I decided to keep it going for as long as possible and get multiple harvests from it. I've been harvesting these shoots many, many times over the months since April time. Every time I get shoots, I pick them, and you can cook them just like tender stem broccoli. And eventually, I can cut it at ground level using a knife, cut a cross shape in the stem, and it will then reshoot again and produce more edible shoots. I've managed to keep these kinds of brassicas going for about 3 years before they eventually go up to seed and decide that they've had enough. I really like to grow micro leaves in the house because it's a great way of getting extra vitamins and nutrients and flavours throughout the winter. This mix here is all kinds of odds and ends of chard, brassicas, mustards, things that I've been using, and they've got a bit old now, but they've been stored in a good dry environment, so they're still good to use. And I've also got some peas. Any kind of peas are fine, including marrow fat peas that you can buy in the supermarket. And these are for pea shoots. And they will produce shoots about this high. You can make your own little allotment on a windowsill that is cropping right the way through the winter. All you need is a little bit of a sunny spot. One of the key ways that I get as much food as I can all year round is intercropping and interplanting, which basically means putting plants between other plants. So in one bed you might have something that I planted there in March or April, something else that went in July. There'll be things in gaps that I'm putting things in now. So you're constantly looking forwards, looking for space. Celery is brilliant as a cut and come again vegetable, which increases the harvests. Ideal for smaller gardens, you get more from the plant. So you just take off each individual stem as you want to use it. And then the rest of the plant can grow on and produce more leaves. So as well as harvesting outside leaves, you can cut the whole celery plant, the whole head of celery. And then this little base here, pop it in a pot of compost, water it, and this can go on a windowsill, and it will gradually reshoot, and you get a really delicious cutting celery all winter long on your windowsill in the house. And this can be done with shop-bought celery. For me, growing is such a key part of what I do. And it gets you outside, which is brilliant. There's some days when you look out of the window and it's like really grey and miserable and drizzle, but you want to have a cabbage for dinner, so I'll go out and get that. So I may as well do something else, and before you know it, 2 hours have passed, you're feeling energised and got all that fresh air. It's just a lovely feeling.
Oh, that's inspiring. And I think everybody, even if we've grown vegetables all our lives, can learn something from that. Now, as well as having vegetables in the middle of winter, I like to have some flowers, some colour too. And one of the best bets, and one of the plants that gives me most cheer, is Mahonia. Now, Mahonias, by and large, are not very friendly. They're very prickly. They're that sort of deep, dark green that can suck in light. And most of the flowers of Mahonias, like Mahonia Media Charity, come in the new year. But there are varieties that break all those rules. And this is relatively new. It's called Mahonia Soft Caress, and it's only been around for about 10 years. But you can see, it's soft. It's not prickly. And if you grow this, you will get flowers before Christmas. And they are lovely, buttery, lemony yellow with fabulous fragrance. So I've got a pot, good drainage holes. They will grow in deep shade. They will grow in dry shade, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's what they prefer. Light shade or even full sun is fine, but they don't like being too wet. so reasonable drainage will help. So I'm putting a crock in there, a little bit of peat-free compost with some perlite just to improve the drainage. And then just take it out the pot. It's got a good root system. In fact, that's exactly the right height. And then fill around it. And it's never worth using too big a pot for a plant. There's nothing gained in having more than an inch or so of soil around the outside of it, because there is a risk that excess compost acts as a sump and holds moisture so that it can get a bit waterlogged. And if you don't have a garden, you can keep it in the pot. It will need potting on in about 2 or 3 years' time, but it'll be very happy in a pot, and when it's finished flowering, you can put it in a shady corner and it will go on being happy for the rest of the year, and then put it back out next winter. Now we're going to visit one of your gardens, and this one is in Cambridge.
Hi, my name's Grace, I'm 19, and this summer I've been building a bug hotel.
Hotel. And certainly that's an inspiration to build them. And they're very effective. They don't just look good, they really do work. And if you can't run to a bug hotel quite as magnificent as that, actually just a pile of twigs, logs, or even leaves will provide invaluable cover. Now, still to come on today's programme. Adderley sheds light on the fascinating life of Ellen Wilmot, one of our leading 19th century gardeners.
It is claimed that she secretly scattered the seeds of the giant thistle, Eryngium giganteum, in the gardens of unsuspecting fellow gardeners to derail their plans. Hence its common name, Miss Wilmot's ghost.
Rachel joins forces with fellow flower enthusiast Arthur Parkinson.
This one is a single magic wand, like a pantomime extra, isn't it?
It's kind of like a mad firework.
Isn't it just?
But I think that starriness is so Christmassy.
Couldn't be more.
Yeah,
Just put it.
beautiful.
But first, we're off to Great Dixter in East Sussex. Nick was there a few weeks ago.
Each winter, we celebrate the season using plants. Mistletoe adorns doorways, hollyberries glisten in festive lights, and a humble conifer takes centre stage, dressed to the nines in homes up and down the country. But apart from this brief moment in the spotlight, when it comes to choosing trees for our gardens, conifers often tend to get overlooked, more fashionable trees such as cherries, birches and amelanchier. But I don't think that's right. I want to fight their corner. So I've come here to visit one of their greatest champions. Great Dixter is a world-class garden, renowned for challenging the status quo. This place sets the trends. It rarely follows them. There have always been a few conifers amongst its iconic borders, but due to head gardener Fergus Garrett's passion, over the last 10 years, their numbers have swelled, and they're now an integral feature throughout the garden. Fergus, I guess most people think of Dixter as being, all about the big, lush, herbaceous plants, but actually, this topiary, these hedges, the conifers strewn through the garden, actually are absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, I mean, there's such a versatile group of plants, Our main infrastructure, other than the buildings and the brick walls, relies on yew hedging, which then compartmentalises the whole garden into a series of rooms, and then you don't see all of it at once. There's a sort of sense of excitement and wonder as you go through an archway and a new space opens up in front of you.
I guess those walls are not just kind of structural and aesthetic, but they're also filtering the wind and getting things a little bit protected. Yeah. And I mean, down in the corner here, you've used a conifer in a totally different way.
This is would you believe it, a little Scots pine. This is Pinus sylvestris Lodge Hill. We're used to those big trees, aren't we?
Okay. Yeah,
and here it is in this compact form, and it's just such a good full stop to say this is the end of the border, and a new border starts beyond it.
I remember, 30 odd years ago, the international controversy when this garden was changed from being a rose garden to an exotic garden.
We got complaint letters when we went from roses to the cannas and dahlias, like you say, and then it became controversial because I introduced these extraordinary conifers into here, which give us a completely different texture to everything else.
They're so characterful.
That's why I love them. They're a sort of cross between Where the Wild Things Are and Sesame Street. For instance, you've got that extraordinary Cryptomeria orycoides that looks like, a tree with pipe cleaners coming out of it.
Or a load of octopuses attached to each other.
Yes, yeah, what an extraordinary shape. You could do this garden quite easily with just big leaves, big leaves, big leaves, but you need that twist to the planting, and these give you that twist.
Exactly. I notice up here there's a particularly beautiful, I'm not sure if it's a larch, but it's got that sort of twisty quality to it. It's just superb.
Yes, this one's a form called Horseman's Recurve. And of course, this will lose its leaves.
I mean, I suspect that's a thing that a lot of gardeners are not aware of. Not all conifers are evergreen, are they? Like a lot of the larches, and they take on, fabulous autumn colours.
And then they're just so vibrant when they burst through with their foliage in the spring, and they have tiny little purple flowers on them as well. So it does something for every season because its winter skeleton is so effective as well.
Is so iconic, isn't it, the long border? I mean, I have to say, I didn't remember from the past, but now I'm seeing you've actually managed to integrate the conifer, Pinus mugo, into here.
Actually, it's been here over 50 years, and we used to keep it nice and compact by pinching out the candles. You do that in the spring when it's growing. But
yeah, just take out those new growths, basically.
That's it, just snap them off. We haven't done it for a few years, so it's become this much more sort of open structure, and I'm not sure what to do next with it.
The nature of this now means that you really can kind of plant through it. So you could run a load of these persicarias through it, which would be fantastic, get that form. Or what about a little annual climber, something that's delicate and works its way through?
Yeah, I think they're really good ideas. So I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep elements of it compact, like that, open up other pockets and grow things through other pockets, pinch those out, so you're almost cloud pruning it with gaps in it, and I'm going to grow that sort of stuff through it. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. I'm going to do that.
This is the poster child of all those conifers that people bought back in the day, and they were supposed to be, little dwarfs that got no bigger than this.
Yeah, this is Elwood's Gold, it's another Chamaecyparis.
How old is this one?
Well, this was planted in the 50s. We're expecting it to get maximum, 5-6 feet, and here it is at 30 feet.
I guess the challenge is with something like this particular species, you can't cut back into it, right?
No, I mean, you can do a little bit by cutting into the active tissue there, but that's not going to get you very far. You've got other conifers that you can cut back and they'll resprout from old wood.
So I can see you've got a Thuya over here. This is Occidentalis Rheingold, right? I mean, this is one that I probably use more than any other conifer. And you can cut it back, right?
You can actually cut right the way back into the old wood and take chunks out because it will just regrow from that.
And looking at this, the thing that makes the difference compared to, you know, say a Leylandii, is these guys are covered in these little bibbles, these little dormant buds. So as soon as you cut back to that, it suddenly springs into life.
And then you can take your cuttings from here as well as a safety net, you know, so you can do these heel cuttings.
So it's literally just tearing away a piece of timber from the main stem. That makes the heel. And then this would go into a gritty compost to about this kind of level, and that would root through in, what, 3-4 months or so?
Yeah.
It's fantastic plant.
Yeah, it's one of my favourites.
I love that you've put all these conifers together in containers. It just creates such a lovely kind of tapestry of textures.
You know, there's some sort of true dwarfs here, like that Cryptomeria wilmeriana, which if we put it into a border, it'll remain a compact specimen, only 1 to 2 feet tall. And there's a lot of them. There's little larches as well in here and little pines that are all dwarf forms, which are going to be very effective. When I love having them in pots because you can move them around, you can mix them with other plants as well. And there's some sort of nice range of colours in here, but also things that would be trees as well, like that Pinus Montezuma, which is a Mexican pine, which makes a massive tree, but look at it in a pot here. You're effectively bonsaiing it.
I mean, it's really inspiring just to see the sheer range of different ways you employ conifers in the garden, and I really hope it inspires people to get a bit brave and try a conifer.
Yes, they should shed those shackles of these being, you know, bad taste plants or out of fashion plants, because I think they really deserve a place in the garden.
To my generation, conifers have never really been part of the horticultural conversation. They're always sort of on the edge and very much a specialist thing, unfashionable in a word. But seeing how they're used there and the brilliance with which Fergus has incorporated them into the planting means that where he has led, we will surely follow, and why not? They are fascinating and beautiful plants. We're at that point in the year when we really have to think about the plants that need protection from the worst of winter weather. And we've learnt over the years that dahlias really don't cope at all well if left outside in this garden. So we lift them. And I've got some here just to show you the way that we store our dahlias, and it works well. And if you live somewhere where you have very free draining soil, then you should be fine to leave them in the ground. But otherwise, lift them, and this is what we do. First of all, cut them back. And you can see it, I've taken off the top growth, and there's no need to do that until they get blackened by the first frost. In fact, it's quite a good idea because the tubers will go on growing for as long as there is green growth above them. So I'm going to put these under a tap. Now, this is not cosmetic. I'm not trying to scrub them. It's simply so that I can see clearly what sort of state they're in. Turn them upside down, and it's worth feeling them, because if they're firm, these are really firm, then that's good. That's exactly what you want. Whereas if they're squidgy, cut them off and remove them. Don't store anything that is badly damaged, is soft, if you can see any kind of fungus. And also, this washes out any slugs that might be stored and will nibble away at them over winter. Now, the next stage is to turn them upside down and leave them overnight or for a day or two. And you can just put them upside down in the crate like that. And the reason you do that is to drain any moisture out of the stems. And it's not just water from washing them, it's moisture that comes from the stem itself. And then when they're ready for that, you can store them. You pack them in like this, and ideally keep the varieties separate. I put a sheet of newspaper underneath, and what we do is just take old newspaper and just put them around like that. And this protects them from the cold, stops them drying out, One more. And there. This now needs to go into a cool, dark place. By cool, I mean frost-free, but they're perfectly happy at somewhere between 5 and 10 degrees all winter. You don't want them to grow, but they do need to be protected from frost and they need to be dark, and that also will keep them dormant. The only other thing I would say is really important is label them. Now, Ellen Wilmot was one of gardening's great characters, but the truth is that we don't really know that much about her. And Adderley visited Spetchley Park in Worcestershire to find out more about her story.
Records of garden history are peppered with figures who over the years have shaped landscapes across the UK. You've probably heard about the heavyweights, people like Vita Sackville-West and Gertrude Jekyll. But amongst these is another equally influential plantswoman, and we really should know a lot more about her, Miss Ellen Ann Wilmot. In fact, Jekyll wrote that Wilmot was the greatest of all living women gardeners. Ellen's own 30-acre garden at Whalley Place in Essex was once one of the most beautiful in England. Sadly, the house and garden were demolished long ago. But Ellen also had a great deal of influence on the gardens here at the Spetchley Park estate, which was the marital home of her sister Rose. Despite her gardening genius, Ellen's reputation is eclipsed by accounts of her eccentricity, such as booby-trapping her prized plants to frighten off thieves. It is claimed that she secretly scattered the seeds of the giant thistle, Eryngium giganteum, in the gardens of unsuspecting fellow gardeners to derail their plans, hence its common name, Miss Wilmot's ghost. Rumour had it that she also carried a loaded revolver and a knuckle duster in her handbag. But a recent find sheds more light to the real story. Archivists unearthed trunks stuffed full of things, piecing together a more detailed account of Miss Ellen Wilmot's life. It starts in the mid-1800s. Ellen Wilmot and her younger sister Rose were born to comfortably well-off parents. The sisters were fortunate, not just in coming from a well-to-do family, but in also having a very generous, childless godmother, because when she died, she left the sisters the equivalent of £12.5 million each. But they'd never really been taught the value of money, and Ellen just wanted to spend, spend, spend. Together, they bought a property in the Alps. With money no object, they transformed it into a paradise, bursting with trailing roses, vines and arches smothered with clematis and wisteria. They also had a place in Italy and designed the garden immaculately in the local style. Rose soon went on to marry and start a family. But the sisters remained close. They would have discussed their gardens at length and exchanged cuttings, seeds and bulbs on a regular basis. Rose was a skilled plantswoman herself, but her talent has been overshadowed by Ellen's notoriety. However, these gardens and grounds are a legacy to both sisters. Theirs was an era when great plant hunters like Ernest Wilson brought exotic specimens back to the UK. Some of these trees would have come from expeditions that Ellen funded. Wilson returned from one such trip with 2 Ceratostigma seeds, and knowing Ellen's talents, he entrusted her to grow them. But one of Ellen's earliest passions was daffodils. Her reputation led to her appointment to the RHS Daffodil Committee, forging her way into a man's world. And she won many medals, not only for daffodils, but also for tulips. And there's even one here from the Chrysanthemum Society. She was at the top of her game. So why do we know so little about this brilliant gardener? Ellen Wilmot's fall from grace can be traced back to 1897, and an event that should have been the pinnacle of her career. Ellen was set to receive the RHS inaugural Victoria Medal of Honour. Only 60 people could hold that honour at any one time, and she was to be one of just 2 women to be awarded, including Gertrude Jekyll. And yet she didn't turn up for the ceremony. The no-show was seen as the rudest of snubs, and Ellen was shunned from that day onwards. Nobody even bothered to question why Ellen wasn't there, but the letters found here at Spetchley Park recently may have the answer. They revealed her deep attachment to a Miss Georgiana Jeanne Tufnell. Jeanne was a close friend of Ellen and served as lady-in-waiting to Princess Mary Adelaide. The letters suggest that Ellen and Jeanne were deeply in love. But in the Victorian era, same-sex relationships would not publicly have been acknowledged. But just as Ellen was readying herself to receive her Victoria Medal of Honour, she received some shocking news. Jeanne announced her engagement to a man 35 years her senior. Ellen must have been heartbroken. She became increasingly remote and obsessive. Her lavish spending started to spiral out of control. Worse still was the death of her sister Rose in 1922. Rarely caught off guard, Ellen poignantly said, "Now there is no one to send the first snowdrops to." By the end of the 1920s, the money had gone, and in 1934, Ellen died alone. But what about those myths? Did she really set booby traps in her daffodils? Well, actually, she did, because at that time, it took about 12 years to create a highly sought-after daffodil, and she had to protect her investment. Did she maliciously sabotage other people's gardens by scattering the seeds of that spiky eryngium? I doubt it. I think she just wanted everybody to have this beautiful plant in their garden. Did she carry a loaded revolver in her handbag? It would seem so, and a knuckle duster. Because having lost all her money, she had to sell all her carriages and rely on trains. So these were for her personal protection, walking along dark country lanes late at night. Ellen Wilmot pushed the boundaries of women's roles. She cultivated thousands of species of plants, many of which are named in her honour. Yes, she had her quirks, but that really shouldn't overshadow her legacies. Ellen's achievements in botany and horticulture really should have made her one of the trailblazers of her age.
Well, I can tell you that Miss Wilmot's ghost is to be found here at Longmeadow. Not here in the Jewel Garden, she's in the Wall Garden in the front. Now, I'm going to plant this clematis as part of my tidying up of all the plants that I haven't got round to planting, or to be fair to myself, there hasn't been a suitable moment to plant it. And I'm putting it here with the purple hazel as a backdrop. Tall plants don't have to be in the middle of a border. They can be at the front as long as you can see through. Now, the point is about clematis, it doesn't matter if it's group 1, 2 or 3 or what variety it is, they all need a rather bigger hole than you might suspect, much deeper than the pot needs. And then give it a little bit of compost of some kind to act as a sump more than anything else. It's not so much the feeding they need a reservoir. They can get their roots down and reach moisture, because drying up is bad news for a clematis. Right. And when you plant it, if you take this trouble, it will pay dividends. So put that in there like that. One more. And the second thing, when you plant any clematis, if I take it out of the pot for a moment, you can see that the height of the compost in the pot is there. Well, you need to plant it at least an inch deeper than that. And 2 inches won't do any harm. It won't do any harm if these stems are underground. And that does two things. One, it protects them. And two, especially for group 1 and group 2 clematis, if they get clematis wilt, they will regrow from that point underneath the surface of the soil. Whereas if you plant them at that level and they get clematis wilt, they'll die back to the roots, and that's it. That's the end of them. We'll put that in like that. There we go. And with all clematis, give them a really generous soak when you plant them. And every spring, give them fresh mulch, generous mulch, of garden compost if you've got it, but anything, including wood chips, will do fine, and another good water. Now, we think of clematis as being grown for its floral qualities, these wonderful flowers that appear, first of all, almost as early as late February, going right through to Christmas in some cases. But we're going to visit one of your gardens in Oxfordshire with a use for clematis that perhaps most of us hadn't been aware of. Absolutely beautiful. But whereas that will grace the outside of any door at Christmas time, Arthur Parkinson joins Rachel to create decorations for the inside of the house garnered from the garden.
Isn't there something so special about this time of year, going out into the garden and just sort of gathering stuff and bringing it in and making something beautiful with it?
Yeah, I can't believe what you've found.
Well, I've found some quite good things, and so have you. Absolutely amazing.
Although I will be honest, this has come out the attic rather than the garden.
But originally it was in the garden.
Originally in the garden in June and July, this was harvested.
We're going to do a tablescape.
Yes.
Which is like one of those hot words, isn't it, at the moment, tablescape.
It's become it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Like every garden centre you go in, it's laid out for you. It makes you buy everything, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do an arrangement to go on the table.
I'm going to go high. I'm going to leave the table to you, and then I'm going to go above us. Using all this dried stuff, which is very light. So hopefully it will all work really well. So I've got allium, Christophii, that lovely big one, Star of Persia, which actually has kept a bit of purple, and I love that.
Beautiful.
And then accompanying it, I've got Honesty.
What's so important when you're doing a table is not making something too high, because you have this huge, beautiful arrangement and then people move it because they can't see and talk.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so this one I'm aiming for long and low. Because it's such an open shape, it's quite difficult for the flowers to sort of stand up, so it needs some support. And I'm just using a bit of scrunched up chicken wire. And then you can hold it just with some tape, really, some sticky tape, and that will all get covered by everything.
So I was going to just put all this in a vase for you, but I thought that's quite boring. So I'm going to do something that's a bit off the cuff. I've got this chicken wire off the roll, and it's helpfully curving.
I'm intrigued.
And I thought I'd just be able to mould it into some kind of globe shape. But I don't know about you, sometimes when I look at just dried flowers, I think, oh, they need a bit of pizzazz. So I'm going to put in these copper wire fairy lights. And usefully, it's quite high tech, these have got a remote. So when we hang it, we can both stand back and turn it on like the telly.
Oh, I'm so excited. OK, right, let's start making. So I'm going to now look at that kind of long and low shape. So I think sort of building it up first with some greenery. I've got this lovely mature ivy. I love when the leaf sort of changes shape.
I mean, I appreciate ivy more than ever because it's the best thing for bees and then it feeds the birds.
So, Arthur, that looks amazing.
Well, thank you,
already.
they're kind.
I love those alliums.
It's helpful, actually, that I've left some on the stem, because the ones that are on the stem I can just spread through the chicken wire. But this one is a single magic wand, like a pantomime extra, isn't it? It's Schubertii.
It's absolutely beautiful,
yeah.
Schubertii. It's kind of like a mad firework.
Isn't it just?
But I think that starriness is so Christmassy.
Couldn't be more.
Yeah.
The key thing with drying any garden flower really is to get it out of the garden before it's looking like it's been ruined by the weather.
Yes.
So all of these I gather up as soon as they go that kind of like milky green colour. And mine go in an attic, but if you've got a spare room, anywhere I think where they're not going to get damp is the key thing.
Exactly.
So not the garden shed, sadly. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong.
So what stage are you at now? That's really coming along, isn't it?
Sort of planet Star Wars stage, I think.
But that's really looking beautiful. It is a constellation of stars, isn't it?
It's become that, hasn't it? I need to put them all there.
Yes.
But I think I'll have to do that once it's hung up now.
Yeah. So I've just got a few more bits I want to put in here and just sort of taking my time over it. And there's also this Pittosporum. I love Pittosporum in the garden. It's just the most useful, neat evergreen shrub. It's got these lovely little curled leaves, and I just think it's a fantastic foliage plant, and then it's brilliant for cutting, isn't it? I think now I'm just going to do that sort of extending on either end, and I found a pyracantha, well, still with a lot of berries
the
on it.
blackbirds haven't found.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm going to start threading through the honesty, the precious honesty, and I love how it almost looks like, you know, that shell, the mother of pearl.
Yes. And it's perhaps not a very showy plant earlier in the year, so you have to remember, don't you, to have it?
I find it looks fantastic, just as the parrot tulips are just at their final stage, and it's got that lovely purple confetti.
Now I'm thinking, Arthur, because sort of inspired by what you're doing, and that little bit, the little bit of mauve you've got in the allium, there's still a bit of mauvey purple on these echinops, but very,
Love
very
them.
subtle.
Yeah, they're beautiful. They're one of my favourite perennials, so good for bees.
I feel I'm going to add some flowers.
I think, yeah.
And I found in the garden chrysanthemums.
Look at those. I mean, they don't even look like chrysanthemums to me.
Isn't that beautiful? That kind of real, you know, pale
Yeah.
copper colour. Such good plants and so good for cutting because they just last
Weeks.
incredibly well,
Yeah.
don't they? I just think if I have a little froth of grasses,
Yeah.
the whole thing might have a bit of the
Little bit,
sparkle
yeah.
that you're getting. Do you feel like you're more or less there with yours?
Yeah, I feel like Mr. Spaceship's ready to take off from the table now because I can't really work with him anymore. He's become his own
Exactly.
little being.
And then probably add a few more bits when it's
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Right, well, this is the first time you will have seen them together.
Well, I love how the grass is, like, joining them up.
I was going to say, it does pretty
Yeah,
much join up
yeah.
in the middle, doesn't it? This is wonderful, Arthur. I love it. It's like spun gold. What do you think now about putting some... I'm imagining ivy.
Yeah, I
gels.
think it definitely needs a runner.
Yes, let's do that
Yeah.
then. Wouldn't it be lovely, do you think, to put something green on the napkins as well?
Well, I think actually what could work really nice, something quite exotic for the napkins.
Exotic.
You know the pelargoniums, the scented ones?
Oh, yes. And then as you undo the napkin,
Yeah.
all that fragrance comes up.
So this just reminds me of Turkish Delight, but what we always have at Christmas, actually.
There we go.
Oh, they've come on. That's a relief.
It's so pretty, isn't it?
Yeah, the tracing paper, the honesty now really comes into its
Yeah.
own.
What could be
Yeah.
better? Bringing our gardens indoors at Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Rachel.
Well, that's the end of this special programme, celebrating not just winter, but also the whole of our gardening year in all its glory. I hope that you have a wonderful Christmas and a very happy New Year, and that the gardening year ahead of you unfolds in a blaze of colour and delight. And we'll see you back here at Longmeadow in the spring. So until then, bye-bye.